Pankaj, you alluded to some of the culture at your lender in 2007, and the fact that they just assumed risk was sandbagging, which we've all been accused of. Why don't you talk a little bit more about that experience and the role culture and risk appetite can play?
Right. So now that we have, or I have, like 12 years of objective distance from that event, really, I think your perspective clarifies a little bit. And I think when I think about what transpired at that time, it was very clear that risk was not on the table. And I don't mean that they were not involved, but they were not on the table in a substantive manner when the key decisions were being made about whether we should do this in the first place. So this business, right from the start, for example, was a cards and sales finance business, very small ticket sizes, basically very small lines. So lots of subprime, almost new to credit kind of customers were on the portfolio. And here we were offering a large loan with an unsecured loan with a tenure from 3 to 5 years. And the loan sizes were order of magnitude larger than the limits that these people had. So there were very significant design issues where the organization didn't have the native knowledge. And, it's absolutely all right to do such things, but what needs to happen in situations like this is that multiple functions need to come and create a worldview and say, here is what is likely to happen. Yes, there are different perspectives on these dimensions of growth and profitability, but let's kind of, agree on certain numbers and then do certain level of testing. So that's, the biggest piece that in my mind that was missing at the time, which is, risk was not substantively involved. I think that changed subsequently. Regulators pretty much mandated that risk be involved. And frankly, I sometimes feel that now the whole culture might have gone to the other extreme of us being the kind of the hurdle to be crossed rather than the collaborators to the core decisions, really. And that's much more of a situation that I would like, the organizations to create in terms of culture. I think another just one quick reminder to everybody, and I think it was very interesting from the survey, Eric, that whole digital customer engagement actually ended up coming, quite high in how people thought about its importance. And it is so true. Just look at the last Economist cover. It is basically talking about the rise of digital finance, basically. So really, customers are totally getting used to the new dynamic that these e-commerce and the whole digital revolution has germinated. So it's very important that more important than any other time, that risk management become core seat on the table when these decisions are being made. Otherwise, what will happen is we'll create these horror stories of how this particular experiment of lending actually went very very badly. And in the interest of community as well as in the interest of lenders, I would like to not create those kind of vivid experiences of blowups.
Fair enough. Yeah, I similarly, have had large bank experiences with risk probably having a suitable seat at the table. It's interesting working at smaller lenders how that role changes, because when you're at a startup that is not profitable from a lending standpoint, not lending or cutting out large segments in the face of anticipated losses is really not an option. Cutting off lending or originations can absolutely kill a business. A startup that requires growth to fuel new fundraising creates a very interesting dynamic in which risk has a seat at the table, but also can't always say no. And what I found myself often doing at both of the small lenders I worked at is really holding my nose on some deals that I would have absolutely killed at a bank, but recognizing that without growth, the company dies. And it's a very interesting, delicate balancing act working at a small lender. In some ways, it's almost easier in a bank where you have silos, and I think you lose some of the strategic interaction and some of that partnership you referenced at a large bank. But it's sometimes easier to play that risk manager role in a large bank where you're responsible for your area and aren't forced to help the company grow, versus at a smaller bank or smaller lender where it's honestly more interesting, but much more challenging in my experience.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to do a little of analysis at some point in time about the lifetimes of risk managers at big banks versus smaller lenders. I think both of them are hazardous places for risk managers, but I think it'll be interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Especially on the topic of risk appetite, I think my experience, it is very well structured in big banks. Love to hear your experiences, how important and critical it is for smaller financial institutions. And if not, are there any other challenges they're facing, Eric, from your perspective, that need to be addressed more than risk appetite?
Yeah, I think the challenges at small lenders are numerous. Like I said, it's in my experience more interesting playing those roles because you have to wear multiple hats. At the same time, the limitations are obvious.